So this is more like a specific webinar where we will be going to talk about how you can use EzzyBills to use tracking your product in your accounting software. And we will see how to enable the inventory item bills extraction, how EzzyBills put it, how does the item code matching works in EzzyBills, and what are the different methods or different options you get, and how does it work. So let's start with the webinar. With this particular webinar, we will straight away go into the subject today, that is item codes extraction. So essentially, if you start EzzyBills new, and then if you're uploading bills, I'm assuming you already know how to upload bills. You can drag and drop, you can email. I'm not going to talk more about basic features and functions because for those, we have our weekly webinars. If you've weekly demos, if you want to register for one of those, you can also go on to ezzybills.com on book a demo, and depending on which zone you are, which country you are, you can go ahead and book a demo for a respective country. So now, yeah, so essentially the default by default, EzzyBills does not have the inventory item codes extraction on. So by default, if you upload an invoice, this is how it looks in Zero. This is the default settings of EzzyBills, correct? Now, if you can see, this invoice is a Bunnings invoice. It has item code, it has product description, it's an item invoice. By default, EzzyBills export it in this fashion. All the line items will be extracted and they will be exported to the Zero, but the item column in your Zero would be empty. So this is the default settings. Now we want to turn on the item codes extraction, and we want to do the item code matching in the Zero and export the item codes in Zero as well. So for that, what we need to do is, it's a little settings tweak in EzzyBills. What you do is you go to your settings option here. And in that setting option, you will find 3 different categories. So the first one's account settings, the second one's approvals and expenses, the third one's is advanced option. We will go to advanced options here. By default, when your EzzyBills account is new, by default, it looks like this: item invoices, and then allow stock invoices is unticked. I guess item code description matching is already ticked, and this box description, the default item code, is empty. So now if you want to turn on the settings, you simply need to click allow stock invoices. And after you've changed the setting, you need to save these settings. So I'm going to click on save settings. Now these setting, allow stock invoices settings, I've turned it on. Now, what is going to happen when I turn on the allow stock invoice settings? If I'm to show you the document, like let's have a look at the document. Now what's happening is EzzyBills is extracting everything. If you want to see what EzzyBills extract and how the extraction, after extracted, how the data looks, you can simply click on the logs for the document, and then you click on view invoice data. So this is how EzzyBills has extracted this invoice so far, right? You can see the item code here, and they are same. You can see the item codes here, description, everything. Now, when it's going to put into, now I have turned on the allow stock invoices. Now what's going to happen, EzzyBills is going to export the item to your connected accounting software as well. For this webinar, I'm using Zero as my connecting software, but it works same with the other softwares as well. For example, MYOB, QuickBooks, if you're using inventory management softwares like Simpro, Deer, it works pretty much in the same fashion. So now the question comes, how will EzzyBills export this item into your Zero? Now, essentially, there are 2 types of groups that EzzyBills deal with in terms of customers. So the first customer group will say, okay, in my Zero or in my accounting software, I have all the catalog, which is pretty configured. It's neat. I have all the I have all the I have all the item codes well set in the connected accounting software. So what I want EzzyBills to do is just go into my accounting software, find the matching item, and then export it to that item That's group number one. Then we have group number two of customers, which would then say, okay, in my accounting software, I don't have items configured. I have too many items that I buy and sell. So I want EzzyBills to create that item for me in my accounting software and then receive the invoice. So we support both the features. It's just the settings tweak. So you can configure your EzzyBills account depending on what your need is. So if you want to do just the matching, you can, in your settings, you will just have allow stock invoices. That's all. If you want EzzyBills to create the new items on behalf of you in your accounting software, then in default item code, you need to give access. So you will type auto, all in capital letters, AUTO. So, and then of course, you need to click on save settings. So now these settings reflect that, of course, allow stock invoices is turned on. That means EzzyBills is going to export it as an item invoice. And the default item code is auto. That means EzzyBills, when it's exporting, if EzzyBills does the account code, the item code matching, it will export it to that item code. If EzzyBills does not find the item code from your supplier invoice in your accounting software, it will simply create it for you and then it will post the invoice. So now let's go to how account code matching works in EzzyBills. For example, now I'm going to show you, this is the invoice, and then I will show you my products in Zero. So this is where I have my products. So now we're going to cover all the different use cases. I'm not, well, I'm sure there would be many more use cases for different businesses, but in this webinar, we will cover 4 different use cases, which is for this item, I'm going to, so this item is exactly the same as it appears on the supplier invoice in my Zero. So if you note the item code, it's 5828615, and that's the description. If we go to my Zero, you can see 5828615 description, it's an exact match. So this is more of our clients who have very neat catalog, and nothing changes quite the item code and item description from supplier invoice that has come in, and the item code and item description you use in your accounting software is pretty much similar. This is our first case, correct? The second case is where supplier is using an item code and you are using a different item code, but the product description remains the same, or it's not. If it's not exactly the same, quite a few things in the description remains the same. So we will go and check this item 6200434 in my Zero. So as you can see, I'm using a different item code for this item. My item code is 62434 as against 6200434. But the invoice description, the line item description for this item code that my supplier is using and I am using is quite the same, quite similar. So the product description is quite similar. So this is where EzzyBills uses the this fuzzy matching logic, wherein what EzzyBills does is after it has extracted line item a description and item code from your invoice, EzzyBills first goes find this item code. All right, so the EzzyBills then discovers that this item code is not present in your accounting software. Then the second priority is to the fuzzy match of the description. Now EzzyBills will take the description from the supplier invoice, and then it's gonna go into your Zero in products. It's gonna find a match for that description matching item. And depending on the best match, if you have, so that out of 10 keywords, even if 8 keywords or 7 keywords match, then that's a best match. And then EzzyBills will take that item code and export this supplier invoice item to that item code in your accounting software. Now, we covered 2 cases where item code and description is exactly the same. And in second case, we're covering item code is different, but the description is matches. So that's taken care of. The third case where you would come on as a business is, okay, so I'm buying from multiple suppliers and they all use different item code and different product description for the for the part that I'm buying from them. And I, as a buyer, me as a business, I'm using altogether different item code and a description for that particular item. So in this case, neither the item code is similar nor the description. So what we do in such case, so EzzyBills has a customization where we customize it for you in your workflow. It's called as custom extraction, custom workflow. So what we do is we use a change part logic. Now, what is going to do? So in this change part, you will need to give this data to EzzyBills in an Excel file or in a CSV file. The format looks like this. In this file, you will mention the supplier part. This is the data that is going to appear on your supplier invoice, and then you will mention supplier description. And then the third column, which is a key column, wherein you will specify your part. So this is how your Excel file would look like. So this is my part number CHNG PART345 that I'm using for this supplier part and this description, which is essentially the third line item, like the third item code on my invoice. So what I'm doing here, I'm mentioning part, description, and which part in my accounting software I want EzzyBills to use for this item. And you can have an exhaustive list. So if you're procuring from multiple suppliers, there could be it could be the same part in this column, but you might have different part numbers for different suppliers and different description. And you might have an exhaustive list. And then that list is put into your account. It is done by support team. So you can just get in touch with support team. Once you have made this list, you can send it to us. We are happy to configure it for you. So now in third case, 580, what's going to happen is EzzyBills will extract it as this item code and this description, but when EzzyBills is going to export it into 0, it should put it to change part 345 because that's the part that I'm using. And in products, in my 0, you can see there is this part number which I want to use for that particular account code. And then the fourth case is where if the item code is not present at all in your accounting software, where EzzyBills would then create the item code for you and then would receive the invoice. So at the moment, I have this account code present. I'm just going to delete it from my 0. Right. Now, as you can see in my products and services in 0, I just have 3 items. One which is exactly matching with the invoice, one where only description, part of description is going to match. And the last one is where it's a different part, it's a changed part. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly upload this bill on my EzzyBills. There are quite a few methods, like you can either drag and drop or you can email as well. I'm going to simply drag and drop the Bunnings invoice here. It will take anywhere about 30 seconds to 90 seconds to export this invoice to 0. Meanwhile, I'll take you to tracking. So EzzyBills is quite plug and play solution. You don't need to configure quite a few things in EzzyBills. So if you're using item tracking, for example, I'll go into this item, and then as you can see, this is the expense code that I have linked with this item code. So if you're heavily using item tracking, and if you configure that in your 0, you do not need to worry about it at all, because when EzzyBills will export that item code in your 0, it is going to look for the tracking from your item code. And then it will just copy paste when exporting, it's gonna copy the same tracking for the item, and then it's gonna export it to that tracking. If in case you do not have tracking set up in your 0, then you get the option of setting it up when the invoice is exported for the first time. So we will see that when this invoice will get exported to the 0, I will show you how you can select the tracking for that particular item code, and then it will be used for forever in by EzzyBills. The expected result that we would like to see in EzzyBills as discussed is first product is getting exported as it is. I'll just quickly check my settings once again if they're correct. Yeah, they're correct. So the expected result that we are looking here is this particular item code. It's going to be a straight match from the item code in my zero. The second one is going to be matched based on the description and not the item code, because essentially I don't have this item code at all in my zero. I have a different item code, which is 62434. So EzzyBills will extract the description and does the matching. The third one is not at all present in my zero because that's the item code my supplier uses and I'm using a different item code. So we want to see the item code that I've set, which is change part. We want to see this item code showing in zero for the third one. And the fourth one, EzzyBills should be able to create it on my behalf because I don't have it in zero, and then it will export the invoice to that item code. Okay, all right. So as you can see, this invoice has been successfully exported. It took a little less than a little more than a minute, and it's under 2 minutes. So we will just go in zero and see how this invoice has been exported. All right, beautiful. So as you can see, EzzyBills will always give you the original PDF file attached when we export it. And let's go ahead and check how EzzyBills is exported if it's correct. So the first item code was present in zero. As you can see, yep, it has done matching and it has matched this item code. As you can see it in here, it's just simple matching. It has put it on that item code. The second one, we don't have this item code in zero. We have a different item code, which was 62434. I'll just zoom this a bit more. Right. The second one, there are 3 rows, and you can see here EzzyBills went ahead, checked the description, matched, used the fuzzy matching logic, and then EzzyBills discovered that, all right, this description matches, but it has a different item code. It's not the same as on the invoice. So EzzyBills went ahead and matched with 62434, that item code. As you can see here, all the 3 rows have been matched on 62434. The third item, which is 580, I had instructed EzzyBills. I did create a file like this, and then I've uploaded it in my workflow. So EzzyBills went ahead and checked, all right, so now this item code is in the file and the description is matching. So for this item code, we are not going to export it onto this one. We will rather use this particular item code from zero. And then once EzzyBills has covered that, EzzyBills has exported that line item onto the item that I'm using in zero. So you can have multiple items in that list as well, for which you're using a different part number than your supplier. This is how EzzyBills handles it, beautifully done. And the last one, I had deleted it from my zero. So you can see it's not there, but in our export, we can see it. So we will just go ahead and refresh my products page to see what has happened. How come this has come here? So I'm going to refresh it. And then we will see a new item here, which has been created by EzzyBills. So if I go into history and notes, you can see this item was just created by EzzyBills, and then EzzyBills has exported the invoice onto with that item code by creating it, because EzzyBills found out that this particular item code and this description is not present in my zero, in my accounting software. So it went ahead, created that, and then it has exported this bill. This is how the bill is exported. And as of now, it's in the drafts. You can simply approve it. You also get the option of selecting which stage you want to export your bill. So if you want to export it into draft or waiting for approval or approve, it depends on your settings. So this is how EzzyBills does the item code matching. And for the expense code, for the account code, you can see for all my items, this one was default. So if I'm to show you, we'll just have a look. So for example, this is the item I'm using, 310, cost of goods sold. So you can see when it's exported into zero, it has exported into 310, the default, even the specific, if I have mentioned it in this account, and the default. So now if you have it set in 0, if you have all the account codes configured correctly in your item, there wouldn't be any problem. Be it Myob or any software works pretty much the same. If in case you do not have configured that, if in case you've kept it open and EzzyBills exports your first invoice to the default item code, and then you realize, oh, I want this particular item which EzzyBills has just created to go to a different category. For example, let's say I want this particular item to go to advertising instead of cost of goods sold. So there are 3 lines. What I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly change all of them to the account code I want EzzyBills to send it to. Now, this is a change I'm doing in 0. You can do it after it's exported. And then I'm going to click approve. Or you can also click save. It's going to do the same thing. Now you can see once I've approved this bill, this item is going on this advertising expense code instead of cost of goods sold because I've just changed it. Now, after I do any such changes in 0, there is one small step I will need to do in EzzyBills to save these changes in EzzyBills for future bills that are going to come from the supplier. And that change is a small thing. You just go to EzzyBills, you go into settings, and then you click on this little button here. So reload data from your accounting software. I'm going to click on refresh and learn. So what this button is doing is it's going to sync all the new changes that you have done in your accounting software into EzzyBills. So the next time you get a bill from the same supplier, it will use the changes that you have done the last time. If I upload this bill again, by default, EzzyBills will assign advertising expense code to this item code because I have synced the changes now. Yep, so that's how our line item extraction and item code settings work. And eventually, if you're using the tracking, you can go into your 0. There is quite a few reports that you generate based on tracking. The one specifically, if you want to have a look at if how your items are moving, it's this one item summary, and then you can have all your item codes tracked, untracked both. You can see your P&L for this item codes. So it's much better to have EzzyBills export. If you're using item codes, EzzyBills would handle all the different scenarios. Well, that sums up today's webinar. I will thank you for joining the webinar today. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. See you next year. Thank you.